off the phone with multiple defense lawyers about these new bombshell allegations against Vince McMahon that have come out, followed a Wall Street Journal investigation in the last hour. A former staffer, Janel in the state of Connecticut, is accusing Vince of sexually trafficking her. A few things I want to point out. This right now is a civil lawsuit. It is not a criminal lawsuit. The defense lawyers I talked to say the burden of proof is easier in a civil lawsuit than criminal, meaning he won't necessarily be arrested. It may be past the statute of limitations. But the lawyers I talked to say that Vince is essentially going to have to defend this, and you can get into a lot more details in a civil lawsuit than a criminal lawsuit. So this could be damaging to him. But the question is whether or not a prosecutor or district attorney in the district where this happened will look at it and possibly pursue criminal charges. This is not the first thing in the last couple of years for Vince McMahon with regards to sexual impropriety. He's dealt with several allegations. In fact, he had to step away from the company a little more than a year ago. The other part of this that's interesting is what happens with respect to TKO, the company that WWE merged with UFC to create. Is Vince McMahon a problem for them to be one of their primary members of their board of directors? Could the company cut ties with McMahon now that he's no longer necessarily the boss of WWE? He answers to Ari Emanuel. These are all different questions that will need to be asked, and we will be watching here at Going Ringside. Hey, I'm Scott Johnson, host of the Going Ringside podcast. The WWE Vince McMahon scandal is orders of magnitude bigger than anything AEW has faced. AEW in the last year faced a scandal over a backstage fight allegedly involving CM Punk. You know what? Backstage fights have happened in wrestling forever. And allegations of sexual impropriety leveled against Chris Jericho, but not in the form of a lawsuit. Chris Jericho is also not the owner of the company. Tony Khan is, whereas Vince McMahon is in charge. And these allegations, this lawsuit is very far-reaching. It alleges that it involved other members of the WWE organization, high-profile ones at that. WWE is also a publicly traded company, and they have to answer to investors and other media executives, where essentially AEW has to answer to the Khan family and the networks that they deal with. And one other big thing, and this is important, the AEW scandals played out in the wrestling media, on wrestling websites like, say, Sportskeeda or Wrestling News. Not necessarily saying they're a bad website, but the McMahon scandal is on the New York Times, the Washington Post, and other major national mainstream media outlets. This is a big problem for WWE, much bigger than anything AEW has faced. Hey, I'm Scott Johnson, host of the Going Ringside podcast. Rumblings, and it's now being reported that Slim Jim is looking to remove their sponsorship of tomorrow's Royal Rumble. This is an indication of why the McMahon story may become problematic, and why in my last post I talked about this getting mainstream publicity in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post. Advertisers, corporate sponsors, things of that nature do not want to get dragged into this and be put in a position where they have to ask about their connection to WWE while the McMahon situation is front page. So Slim Jim, a longtime partner with WWE that goes back decades, if they pull out due to the McMahon scandal, that is a problem going forward for WWE, and there may be more to come.
A near fall.
Hey, I'm Scott Johnson, host of the Going Ringside podcast. Breaking news, Vince McMahon has resigned from his position with the board and any affiliation with WWE or TKO. This is a monumental, groundbreaking story we continue to follow, but just in, Vince McMahon has tendered his resignation and cut all ties with WWE, essentially his family business that he spent 40-plus years building. This is unprecedented news that the wrestling world has not really come to grips with following this bombshell accusation and lawsuit filed against them for immense amounts of sexual misconduct. Now, McMahon's lawyers have denied any wrongdoing, but either way, he has resigned. This follows things like major sponsors pulling out of the Royal Rumble this weekend, but Vince McMahon, according to reports in just now, has resigned his roles related to WWE. An update on the sex trafficking lawsuit filed against WWE and its former owner, Vince McMahon. McMahon resigned from his position Friday night following the filing of the suit. The Going Ringside podcast has obtained a copy of the non-disclosure agreement, or NDA, McMahon had his accuser, Janel, sign. This is one excerpt. Grant agrees, represents, and warrants that as of the date of this agreement is signed, she will not disclose, discuss, or reveal any claims against or information about McMahon, her relationship with McMahon, WWE, or any employees or independent contractors of WWE. Grant is saying McMahon violated the NDA and filed the suit. On Monday, the Going Ringside podcast will reveal their full investigation on the McMahon case. There will be interviews with veteran defense lawyer as well as a capital management expert. They will analyze whether McMahon, WWE, and others named in the suit should face a criminal investigation and what high-profile wrestlers could feasibly be subpoenaed to testify at the trial. One thing I want to point out that's been updated on the Slim Jim thing, Slim Jim did come back to WWE and sponsor Royal Rumble this past weekend. That happened after McMahon resigned Friday night, so interesting to see there. This is that NDA they're talking about there. It was signed, this is her signature, Janel Grant, January 28th, 22, so almost exactly 2 years ago. She essentially says she'll never, sue, never put anything up there. I'm looking at the monetary considerations to Grant. So upon execution of the agreement, McMahon would pay her $1 million, which it looks like he did. And then there were supposed to be 4 more sums of $500,000 each. One was due last February, then in a few days, this February 1st, 25 and 26, you're supposed to get $3 million. The reporting is McMahon stopped paying. Ergo, this lawsuit was filed. And I want to talk a little about what's in this lawsuit. And then we're going to bring in our attorney to help us analyze what this means for McMahon. I do want to warn you, if you have any person who's sensitive or a minor with you, this is some graphic stuff. I'm going to gloss over some of it, but it is not pretty. Some of the things she's alleging, once again, as you heard McMahon denying it. So Janel Grant was a woman who apparently, according to this lawsuit, was living in the same apartment building as McMahon a few years back. In 2019, he lived in a penthouse duplex. And Miss Grant was struggling because both her parents, I believe, had passed away. So she was a young woman, a pretty woman, by the way, because I think that's important in this, who was struggling in life. According to the lawsuit, her parents had passed away. She was trying to find work, get her life together after dealing.
This is the part where you click subscribe. So fucking do it. Do it already. Do it. Click subscribe. Do it for your mom.